telescope is an extension of its owner that allows us to peer into the universe to see nature on the grandest scale, with wonders that boggle the imagination.
Okay, this is Galaxy Log for November 2nd, 2024, and it's called Brothers 20. And I have a special guest here with me tonight. A long-time observing friend. It's got to be, at least 30 years, right?
Over 30.
Yeah, Rob
30.
Cordovare. Yeah, over 30 years. And so we had a good night with our 20-inch Dobbs at this dark site here, which I tend to use a lot, and Rob tends to use a lot. It's a convenient dark site. It's got good elevation at 1,350 feet, and it's rated Bortle 4. And this night, I think we're both saying it was a good night. Transparency was a little off, but seeing was pretty good. You agree with that, right?
Yeah. And the transparency was okay at times.
Yeah.
It seemed to fluctuate.
Right, fluctuate a little bit.
It wasn't the transparency was not a 10, let's put it that way.
Right, but the seeing was good. Right?
Seeing was very good.
Yeah. So we'll talk about our telescopes. First, Rob, want to talk about your scope?
Sure. So my telescope is a JP Astrocraft that has a 20-inch f3 Lockwood mirror in it. It's a really nice combination. The telescope's built like a rock, very solid and sturdy, and it holds up very well in mild wind. So I can probably observe a little in a little more wind than the longer focal length Dobbs.
Right.
And that has benefits at the time for sure. The telescope does not rock in a mild wind. So, and the other thing that I like about it is, I used to have a 20-inch f5, so that got me up on a 4-step ladder, and a lot of times I was on the 3rd and 4th step during the night. And with the uneven surfaces that we observe on, that just became a little challenging. So I made the move to trade that up or down, whatever you want to call it, or sideways. I stepped down from the ladder and got my feet on the ground, and I can actually observe with the chair, and that has definitely enhanced my observing experience. And I think it's made me a more consistent observer since I've been able to not have to stand and balance myself on a ladder. So there's definitely advantages to the fast scope, and some disadvantages with magnification, obviously, but the trade-off for me is well worth it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, so mine, of course, is the Weight Renegade 20-inch f3.3 Dob. And it was actually Rob that influenced me on selling the old 22-inch f4.5, which had the same focal length as what your 20-inch f5 had, and going up and down in the ladder all night, and observing that one night we were at this same dark site, and I had the 22 up there and you had the 20, and looking at you and seeing you sitting in a chair looking through a 20-inch telescope. Wow, okay. And I just, like I said, going up a ladder all night, you start getting tired. And what you said was important. If you're not fatigued, if you feel good and everything like that, and you're comfortable, you're going to see more. So this was, for me, has become a dream scope, and I couldn't be happier with it.
Yeah, and I can attest to, from having been out with you with it a few times now, not only is it a beautiful looking telescope, which it is, as you can see in the picture, but the optics are really, really strong in there. And I was impressed the very first night I looked through it, and I'm still impressed when I look through it. And I mean, I know your 22 is a really good telescope, but I think this one surpasses it in a number of ways.
Right. Yeah, I'm like I said, I couldn't be more pleased, and you know, getting and the same thing, like I said, getting my feet back on the ground and looking through a large dot like that and being comfortable all night. Every night I've used it so far, I've yet to say, "Oh, I'm feeling tired or fatigued," like that. So, this was definitely an advantage for me and deep sky astronomy and for galaxies and so on to be comfortable all night. So,
Hmm.
all right, so I'm gonna stop share here, and then we're gonna start Rob with some of your best views of that night, or some of your views of that night.
Okay, so that's just another picture of the telescope. And just to give a quick little rundown, so um, it's got ServoCat on it, and this is the hand controller for the ServoCat. This is a Telrad finder. This is a dew heater. This is actually a second eyepiece holder, and it's kind of funky, but it actually comes
Yeah,
in pretty
I can
handy.
imagine.
So
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
a lot of times when I'm going back and forth between, say, like two consecutive um, uh, eyepieces, like a 8 millimeter or a 6 millimeter or a 10 or an 8, and I can uh, place one in here to hold it there while I'm looking through the other one, and it actually is really very convenient. That's the basic setup, and it actually works. You saw the other photo that you had the wheelbarrow handles on it. That's how I transport it. But when it's sitting like this in my garage or in my closet that I made for it, it actually has it locks in place here, and you lock both axes down, and then you can tilt it over and just push it like a wheelbarrow. So
Huh.
it's really convenient to maneuver around. So anyway, so that's a telescope. So here's a few of the objects. I don't have a lot of them. I think I have four major objects. So let's see. Here's the first one. So sorry about the X. It got right on the middle of the
Mhm. That's okay.
photo. So
Excellent.
this is NGC 7814 in Pegasus. It's a really nice edge-on Galaxy, and it's called the Little Sombrero, as you can see why.
Mhm.
Um, it's not as bright as the Sombrero. It's not as bright as its bigger brother, um, but it gets higher in the sky. Gets to a higher altitude
All right.
than the Sombrero does in the springtime. So it makes for a nice object. It's smaller in the eyepiece, but I looked at it, as you can see, at 269x and 219x, and I got really good views of it. And you could see the dust lane. You could make out the stellar nucleus there, and you could see the halo of that galaxy. I thought it was a pretty nice view, and I would definitely, and I'll say this about every object that I'll talk about tonight, is this is one I want to see under darker skies. And I'm not quite sure if I caught it at the highest um, point
Mhm.
um, of its altitude. So I want to track this down again in the next coming dark window. But it's a really pretty object. It's bright. It's easy to see. It's in a pretty star field, and it kind of stands out as a pretty noticeable edge-on galaxy.
Very good.
You you have any recollections of
Well,
previous?
yeah, it does remind you when you first look into the eyepiece, it does have that sombrero look where you have that large central bulge. It extends pretty well. Uh, the dark lane, of course, is a lot more difficult to see than the sombrero. It does
Right.
the larger aperture where you can see the sombrero's dark lane in a smaller scope. Um, but to actually, because it is a very thin dark lane, and you were using higher magnifications, which is what you want to see. Um, you have that great big central bulge, which when you first look into the telescope, that's the first thing you see is that big bulge like that.
Right.
You can actually see it then starting to stretch out. Um, but yeah, it was a really good view. I came over and looked through your scope and saw that. Would you say it was a little? I guess you could say it was a little easier to see the dark lane through the Morpheus and a little bit higher.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was. But the dark lane, as you mentioned, the dark lane didn't jump out the way the Sombrero does. You had to kind of look at it, and you're competing with that bright,
right,
halo
right.
and bulge. But yeah, it was definitely visible, and I think the Morpheus gives a little more contrast, or pulled it out a little better.
More, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that's a good one, and I would recommend people to look at it. It's bright. 10.5
Right.
magnitude. You can track that down in a smaller
Yep.
telescope. You don't need a real, you don't need a 20-inch telescope to enjoy that
Right.
galaxy, but I'm sure it would be enjoyable in any size telescope.
Yep.
All right, so the next one I went to, this was an interesting grouping, and I'm going to talk about these three and then talk a little bit more about their relationship to another galaxy. So this is the NGC 474 group, a triplet in Pisces. They are not gravitationally connected. 474 and 470 are like 110 million light years away, and 467 is actually 220 million light years away. But they make for a nice triplet. These little galaxies here, I was not able to see them, and I could not find this one on Sky Safari. I looked for it. It might be listed if I do a little more searching on it. But for the main part, it's these three galaxies, and some of the interesting things about them is that this photo might show it a little bit. Can you see my cursor?
Yep.
So you don't really see this so much visually, but this is, a shell galaxy, and so is 467. I was getting some interesting bits of information about them, but I was a little confused. Might need to do a little more research on these, because the shells are a result of just their interaction with other galaxies, obviously pulling the gas off. But I was getting my main information from Astronomy Now magazine, and they referenced the fact that made note of the fact that it was peculiar for two shell galaxies to be that close together, but they're really not that close together. They're 110 million light years apart from one another, which it seems to me to be a pretty hefty distance. So,
Right.
but you can get all three of these in the same field of view, and you can definitely see the distinction. 474 and 470 are Seyfert galaxies. And 467 is an elliptical. So they make a nice view through the 10 millimeter ethos is the one that I had, all three of them in the same field of view. So you can see the different kind of shapes and textures to the three galaxies, which is why I chose this one, because when I looked at it, it was real obvious that you had three different types of galaxies kind of going on here, and they were bright enough to spot pretty easily, 11 and 12th magnitude.
Yeah. Yeah. Pisces is really a great constellation. Wish it was a little higher in the sky, but
Right.
But still, yeah. I remember coming over and seeing this view. I think I caught it when you were using the 10 ethos, where they could see all three of them.
Right.
That was a pretty view.
Yeah, and I actually didn't linger too much with the higher power. I went higher, but then I backed it off. It just seemed like I was more interested in seeing all three together and how they contrasted with one another than honing in on one and putting high power on it. But maybe I'll do that the next observing session.
Cool. All right.
So here's the interesting thing about this pair. So there's also another galaxy in the area, which is this galaxy. This is the famous or infamous NGC 520, the Flying Ghost galaxy. It's an ARP galaxy. There's actually two galaxies there interacting with one another. This is a neat galaxy because, again, this is a bright galaxy. It's easy to find and it's easy to see detail in there as far as the irregular shape, and to notice right away that it's not a normal looking galaxy. But it's a fun galaxy to look at because it's bright, and like I said, it does show a lot of its irregular shape. So it's one that you can definitely spend some time on and try to tease out as much of the irregular shape as you can. You can't really separate out the two galaxies individually, but you can kind of sense what's going on there. But the interesting thing about this galaxy is that I was reading up on this N74 group, and it said that it's actually NGC 520 is part of this NGC 474 group, and it's part of a group called the Lion. What's it called? The Lion Catalog of Galaxies.
Huh. Interesting.
No, I just lost my. Hang on for a second here. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Lion Groups of Galaxies.
That's interesting.
And surprisingly, it was very difficult to find anything about the Lion Groups of Galaxies. Searching did not show much. Another club member helped me out and tracked it down using DuckDuckGo.
Right.
So I was doing a little research on that after he sent it to me, but there was some discrepancy. So it's the Line Groups of Galaxies. It's catalog 20 is the 474 group, and in the article it shows NGC 474, NGC 470, NGC 520, and then for NGC 467 has a UGC galaxy. It doesn't reference it by its NGC catalog number, but the UGC catalog number did not match the UGC that goes with NGC 467. So I'm going to look into that further and see why there's a discrepancy there. But the Lion Groups of Galaxies, they have different criteria for what qualifies to be in a group, and I wasn't really I didn't really research it that deeply to know what the distinction was, but so somehow they list those four galaxies together as one group called this Lion Group of Galaxies. So it's just something interesting. If anyone's interested, you might want to look into that and read up on it. I found it interesting that there was very little information on that group of galaxies. Are you familiar with the Lion?
No, is that LYO?
I'm sorry, it's LYON. Yeah.
Interesting.
And even when you find it online, it's very dense. It's very academically presented.
Okay.
So it's not like there's there's so many websites that you can go to that amateurs have put together about different groups of galaxies or photographs that astrophotographers have taken where they've cataloged like every NGC object. This is more an academic web page, and it's not really very easy to navigate. So I'm just curious about it. So
sounds cool. Sounds cool.
Okay, and then the last one is this Hickson 10 and Andromeda, and I really like this group. I like, as you know, Carl, I like Alvin Huey's triplets,
right?
And I like Hickson groups, and the reason is because you have a set group of galaxies that you can easily reference what their magnitude is and what their distance is in relationship to one another, and then try to see if you can identify all the galaxies in the group.
Right.
Compared to, say, pulling up like an Able galaxy cluster or the Perseus, galaxy cluster, where there's hundreds of galaxies and your odds of identifying them, unless you want to really sit there for a long period of time and try to identify each galaxy, I find these really challenging, because at some point you start pushing the limits of your telescope. So even in the Allen Huey triplets, they're not always that visible. Two of the three might be very visible, and then one you have to kind of push a little bit to see it. And this is the same way with this Hickson group 10. So when I guess I started with the 10 millimeter ethos, and these two galaxies right here, 536 and 5. No, I think I'm
529.
Yeah, 529. I'm blocking my own view with my face.
That's fine. I got you.
536 and 529. They're really easy to spot. Yep. They pop up right away. So the next step is trying to get your orientation. Are you have they crossed meridian? Have they not crossed meridian? Which way are you looking at these? What orientation are you looking at these? Because 531 and 542 are not much dimmer, but they're dimmer.
Right.
So I was able to spot 531 pretty quickly, even though it was dimmer than these two. Once you kind of hunt around a little bit, like I knew it, above this galaxy, and it was there, and it was pretty easy to spot.
Yep.
And then this one became a little bit of a challenge. So this one's 14.8. I think if you remember too, it was just kind of a wisp. We just kind of
elongated wisp.
Kind of see it.
Yeah.
But it was there. You could definitely, there was no question that we were seeing it. And for a night where we thought the transparency was a little less than average, to pull in a 14.8 galaxy from that observing site was pretty good.
Yep. Yeah, because I can remember those two stars that are right below 536's core, and then it made a triangle with the galaxy. Yes. I can remember seeing that.
Yeah.
531 was easy. That was real easy in the scopes, and of course the two brighter galaxies were right there like that.
And I think it had crossed meridian when we were looking at it.
It did.
We were looking at it. This is a reversed or upside down image of what we saw. But this is one I definitely, if we get out to the darker site next dark window, I want to get this at when it's crossing meridian or close to it, and see how much more easily that 542 pops in.
Right.
So those are my objects, my galaxies for the night. There were more. I didn't list them. I'll just say there was a pair in triangulum, 783 and 785. They were kind of fun to track down. One was a spiral, one's an elliptical. I didn't spend a lot of time with those, but that was the first time for me, I think, looking at those two galaxies. So I might take a look at them again. But it was a good night up there that night, and I think we made the most of our time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna just stop share, and then we'll get to 9. My first galaxy for that night for this galaxy was NGC 7177 in Pegasus. And here's my near view image. There's particulars. It's a fairly bright galaxy. Decent surface brightness, decent size. Its distance is tight. For the near view image with the 20-inch, the eyepiece is a 4.8 millimeter XWA, which is an APM 110 degree, and gave me 402 magnification. And as I have here, sky conditions good. So it's a barred spiral, but it's kind of sits slightly inclined to us a little bit. So the bar is kind of short. So the first thing I noticed was stellar nucleus, and then the brightening in through the center region here, kind of going almost, I guess you could say northeast and southwest. It seemed to me a little bit brighter on the southern side, the bar, but I was seeing more detail. Bit of modeling all around, extended really well, especially with vertical vision. And you can see in the photograph here, you can see that short bar, and you can see the arms and why it shows a lot of modeling. But yeah, that was a really good view. I actually viewed it at first with the 6.5 Morpheus, and it gave a great view. But I thought, okay, the scene even though the transparency wasn't as good as we wanted, the scene was there, so it still gave me a good view going higher magnification, and that's what I did. So, and you could really start seeing that modeling sticking out on the outer parts of the galaxy. But yeah, it was a good view. I really enjoyed this one. And then NGC 16 in Pegasus. And here's the particulars up here. It's 12th magnitude, has a high surface brightness, small, its type, and its distance. Here again, in fact, I have three views here I'm going to be doing, near views, and all three are with the 4.8 XWA APM. The Galaxy, I mean, it does have that high surface brightness. It is small, but it, has that really nice bright stellar nucleus to it, and that bright inner region core area. And then, especially with averted vision, you can see it extend a lot more. But it's one of those kind of galaxies that, because even though it's not an ultra bright galaxy, but its high surface brightness allows you to really start, put out some magnification. So with a smaller scope, this galaxy should be no problem. It doesn't have a lot of detail, but it was the first time that I actually viewed this that I can remember. I don't have any information that I did before, which is surprising. But yeah, it's a nice bright galaxy. So if you have a smaller telescope, it's a good one to go for. But the one thing you'll notice right away will be that bright stellar nucleus stands right out. And then we head into Andromeda for ARP 282. And here's my near view image. And there's actually 3 galaxies. And here's all the particulars, all of them. 169, and I'll do. That's the Hubble image here, Rob, of the ARP. But let's do the annotated version. Here we go. And here's a wide field image photograph of the galaxies. It tells you which they are here. NGC 169 stood out really well. Little stellar nucleus extended really well. And then the IC galaxy, 1559, which is that interacting galaxy with it. Unlike the Hubble image, I could not see it actually interacting with 169. It looked like there was a little bit of a separation, but it wasn't hard to see. It was, even though it was 14.5, there's a fairly high surface brightness at 12.7. But it's an actual pair, so it's pretty neat. That was a really neat view. I think the next dark window, and here again, like you were saying about going to darker sight, I might go higher magnification and just seeing how much more detail I can see with just the pair there. But it was a pretty sight. And then I noticed on the edge of the field, it was NGC 160, which showed a little stellar nucleus, a little central bulge in the core region, and then this very faint oval outer part of the galaxy. And you can kind of get that through this photograph here, that has a really bright, intense core, which I was seeing with the 20. But then I could see this very faint outer part of the galaxy. And you can see, even though it's 12.6 magnitude, which here again is for a 20-inch telescope, even under fair conditions, is fairly bright. But at 14.3 is the surface brightness, and that's because of that outer region so dim. But you could see it, especially with averted vision, it stood out pretty well. But here, the main thing was the ARP, and I really enjoyed this. That was a really pretty view, and was definitely, for me, that was the view of the night for me. I really enjoy the ARPs, and this is a good one. And like
yeah, and amazing that you can, separate out those two
right,
that easily, and a lot of it is just knowing what you're seeing when you're
right,
looking at it.
right,
Uh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, because you go back, I mean, this Hubble image is just insane. That is a beautiful image. I think that's a fairly new image. I think it was recently released a couple of years ago, maybe a year or so ago.
Mhm.
Because I don't remember seeing it before. And when I was looking for images to put on the near view here, I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize Hubble did this. Incredible amount of detail. It is amazing. But here again, I mean, it's amazing that we're not going to see that kind of detail with our telescopes and an eyepiece, but to be able to pick up some of that detail that and see it in the eyepiece, and knowing that we're making a connection with these far distant galaxies is absolutely incredible. I mean, you look at the distance in these three galaxies, and they're really out there.
Yeah.
And be able to actually still see detail is just incredible. And it's the fun part about visual astronomy. We can't get the color and stuff like that of what the astrophotographers get, but boy, do we make the connection though to these things, and nothing else. And I really enjoyed that, seeing this view. Kind of really, for me, was the view of the night for my telescope. So
very good.
Okay, and that's it for this Galaxy Log. Clear dark skies and happy galaxy observing.
Thanks, Carl.
Well, thank you, Rob, and sharing your views with a fantastic telescope, and a long time, very avid observer. You bring that every night when we go out observing together. It's a lot of fun. It isn't fun when we have those. Yeah, I was going to say, it isn't fun when we have those nights, which we did, where we had both scopes set up and ready to rock and roll, and those clouds moved in and they didn't go out. That was not a fun night, but this night was a lot of fun.
This was a good night, and it's always good observing with you. I always learn something new. Then I forget it the next time, and then you remind me. So that's always good.
Well, just letting you know, before we end the recording here, that I have a list already started for the next dark window. So
good.
I'll send that to you. So there's some interesting galaxies coming up for this early winter, late fall, early winter. So
good.
So I'll send you a list and see what you think.
Okay. Very good.